In the not-so-distant future, human society has been divided into two parts, one which is inhabited by the rich and the other one by the poor. The rich people, who live a lavish and comfortable lifestyle, stay above the line, whereas the not-so-fortunate and working-class people live on the other side of it. The line is a real barrier that was created by the government to separate the two sets of people. At the start of the movie, we are shown an aerial shot of the society that has been divided into two parts. On the left side, we have a futuristic-looking city, whereas the right side represents a dilapidated and crowded area where people struggle to put food on their table every day. After this, we are shown the line, which acts as a border between the two parts. Like any other international border, the line is heavily guarded with armed personnel and strict security. If one passes the security checks, they are free to roam around on the other side of the border. A man named Stu is then seen crossing the line and moving to the city area, where he uses his AI device to know about the time. After getting to know that he's late, he starts running and soon reaches a fancy restaurant. There, a couple is complaining about how the other side of the line is scary and unsafe to live in. Soon, Stu approaches his friend, who recently got engaged with a man. After the introductions, Stu starts chugging his favorite beer, which his friends find weird. Turns out that Stu was born below the line and lived there until he was 18. His family moved to the other side when his mother made a famous app and got rich from it. We also get to know that the people above the line are assigned dates right from their birth, but the people on the other side have to find their own dates. Hence, Stu is yet to find a girlfriend. He also fears that he will die alone. Join the club, Stu. As the group is talking, they are approached by a stranger who confirms that he was eavesdropping on their conversation. He then mentions a dating site called The One That's the One, which guarantees to find the perfect match for someone. In fact, he met his wife through the same site and has been living happily ever since. After this, the strange man opens his tablet and starts showing the company's advertisement. In the ad, a man gives a brief introduction about the company. He says that at Najari Labs, Dr. Najari uses a combination of specifically picked questions and DNA tests to provide the perfect partner, aka the one that's the one, for an interested candidate. Following this, he starts dancing in a weird manner, which is longer than the actual advertisement itself. Gotta get the video to that 10-minute mark for YouTube. In the next scene, Stu is at Najari Labs, where he is staring at the same creepy dance on the screen. Just then, he is approached by that same man, but when asked about the commercial, he responds that he has no idea of it. This confuses Stu, but he decides to ignore it. After this, Stu is taken inside the lab, where he is hooked onto some wires and prepped for interrogation. The man then explains the whole procedure. He mentions that he will ask Stu some questions, while the device will extract and scan his DNA. The results of the two tests will provide the information to determine the one that's the one for Stu. Although nervous, Stu agrees, and the procedure starts. For the first question, the man asks Stu his favorite number, but Stu takes 3 attempts to finalize his answer. Hearing this, the man warns Stu that he must give honest answers so that the perfect match can be found for him. If Stu is a furry, now's the time to speak up. After this, the man asks some very irrelevant questions, which are totally not related to the subject. Despite this, Stu tries his best to answer them. After a while, the procedure is finally over, and Stu is asked to sign over a legal document. He then pays the fee through his digital hands, and gets notified that his partner will be arriving at his home sharp at midnight. The quick processing time stuns Stu, but he thanks the man and departs without any further questions. Later, Stu is at his luxurious apartment, where he is all dressed up and waiting for his partner to arrive. It is 11:45 p.m., and Stu is practicing his conversation skills. Time passes by and it is 15 past midnight, but still no one arrives at the door. This frustrates Stu, so he opens his jacket and drops to the couch. As he is contemplating his decision, a sudden ring is heard at the door. Stu gets delighted and immediately goes to welcome his guest, but to his dismay, it turns out to be an elderly man. The man introduces himself as Bert and walks inside, but Stu is still confused about his arrival. When asked about why he's here, Bert reveals that he was sent as the one that's the one. Stu becomes enraged and complains that there has been a mix-up, and Bert agrees to this. Since both of them claim to be straight, they become certain about the fault and plan on getting a refund. Stu then breaks down and starts explaining his pitiful life on how he can never get a life partner. Hearing this, Bert consoles him, and the two start talking about their life below the line. Turns out that Bert was a car dealer there before he got transferred above the line. After the conversation, as Bert prepares to leave, Stu invites him to stay for dinner, and the old man agrees. They then decide to go to Al's restaurant, which is situated below the line. Surprisingly, both the men love the place and are regular customers there. Later, they reach the line, where they are thoroughly checked by a bunch of security personnel. After passing the checks, they head towards the restaurant and start conversing about their lives. Even the movies they watch are similar. Just then, the restaurant in charge, Al, comes to take their order, and both of them reply at the same time, "Egg white omelet." "You like eggs too? Let's bang." Furthermore, both of them like the yolks separated and on the side. Here we get to know that the men have a lot of uncanny similarities between them. After finishing their dinner, they greet each other and head separate directions. The next day, Stu goes to Najari Labs and starts calling out for the man. When no one responds, he enters a room and finds Dr. Najari sleeping. Suddenly, Bert approaches from behind, and this startles Stu, causing him to scream. Bert also gets frightened, and he too starts screaming at the top of his voice. The noise awakens Dr. Najari, and unsurprisingly, he starts screaming as well. When the duo ask Dr. Najari for an explanation, he simply rushes inside a vacuum tube and teleports away. As a result, Bert and Stu are left alone, and they eventually decide to go out and have grilled cheese. In a drastic turn of events, the duo end up having a romance, and after this, they start spending quality time with each other. They are deeply in love, and it seems like they are a match made in heaven. In the next scene, Stu takes Bert to meet his parents, but the latter seems to be nervous about it. However, Stu calms him down, saying he likes him the way he is. After a while, Bert finally meets up with his parents, and surprisingly, they are impressed by him. The three then discuss in the living hall and start singing songs from the past, which Stu can't seem to comprehend. Following this, Stu thanks his parents for accepting Bert, despite his old age. However, the parents reply that they are happy to have one more old fogey in the house. Bert then hands over the present he bought for Stu's mother, and it turns out to be a mechanical owl. The duo love it very much, and they request Stu and Bert to stay for dinner, to which they agree. Now it's time for Stu to meet up with Bert's family, which consists of his 2 children. Stu is nervous about the meeting, but Bert assures him that it will be less daunting than meeting his parents. Soon, they enter the house, and Stu is approached by Bert's children, Plisa and Bouge. Plisa is excited about meeting Stu, and she even compliments his good looks. However, Bouge declines Stu's handshake and storms to the backyard. "First my dad named me Bouge, now this?" Seeing this, Stu decides to confront Bouge and talk about his problem. In the backyard, Stu introduces himself as Bouge rides up on a small pony. Stu tries his best to strike up a conversation, but Bouge seems uninterested in it. Hence, he picks up a safe ball and asks Bouge to play with him. The latter hesitates at first, but after a lot of convincing, he agrees. While they are playing, Bouge starts opening up about his past and how he misses his deceased mother. Hearing this, Stu comes up with a motivational speech and eventually manages to win Bouge over. In this way, both Stu and Bert's families support the relationship. 6 months pass by, and the couple are now married and living together in the same house. One night, when the couple is going on with their daily lives, someone suddenly rings their doorbell. After opening the door, the same guy from the One That's the One commercial comes inside. However, he claims that he is a different person and only a technician for Najari Labs. The man then claims that he doesn't normally go house to house, but in this instance, something special has occurred. He then reveals that when Dr. Najari tallied the duo's data into his machine, he made a mistake. As a result, he declares that Bert and Stu are not each other's One That's the One. He then shows Stu's match, which turns out to be a beautiful girl, and also Bert's match, which surprisingly is Al from Al's Diner. When the couple try to dispute his claim, saying that they are married now, Dr. Najari suddenly approaches from behind and says that science cannot be disputed. He then states that there is much more at stake, so the couple have to separate and live with their new partners. He also calls his bodyguards, who were standing in the other room the whole time. Left with no other choice, the couple eventually decide to separate and meet their new partners. Stu packs all of his belongings, along with a photograph of him and Bert, and then departs the place. In the next scene, a distraught Stu wanders around the city. Later, he meets up with his new girlfriend, but she seems to dislike all of his habits, including eating the eggs with the yolks left out. Later, while they are at the park, Stu puts some ice cream on her face, like Bert did to him, but this annoys her. Here, Stu realizes that he is simply wasting his time, so he runs to stop Bert, who is about to leave the city. He hurriedly reaches the futuristic station called the Pod Port, but gets there a bit late as Bert enters inside and teleports to another city. Devastated, he starts blaming himself for being late, but right then, Bert approaches him from behind, claiming that he's always late too. Turns out that the other man who left in the pod was not Bert after all. The two then embrace each other and decide on living below the line as a couple. In the last scene, it is revealed that the strange man from the One That's the One commercial and the technician from Najari Labs are indeed two separate people. What? Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.